Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, wherever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It's me, Omar from the Hardware Pod. And the Between the Stripes podcast network is no more. We rebranded. I did some thought after looking at the Instagram and TikTok accounts that said Hardware Pod. I figured a rebrand was good enough to get the most out of those capabilities in terms of social media. So now we're now the Hardware Pod. Rest in peace, Between the Stripes podcast network. Excuse me. So, Jackson and I, we got the Hardware Pod. The other podcasts like this, where we don't talk about college football awards, they'll be podcasts without names, essentially. They won't really be a series, but uh, just excited for the new direction, doing some good things on the TikTok account, catching on to new trends that the young people like. So, just read. I'm excited for that, and I'm excited for the guest I have today, Derril Lucci, one of the people that commented on the teaser promo for the last mini documentary, which you can find on the channel. Just like and subscribe. There's a playlist right there for all 12 mini documentaries. It's been a joy to make those. But I'm joined by Derril, and I'm just excited to have him on. A big college ball fan, just like everyone who listens, just like me and you. And we're just gonna talk stadiums and anything else that our conversation takes us to. So, Derril, can we get a little background and how's everything going?
Hey man, I'm doing great, having a great day. So I'm not sure when's coming out, but right now Purdue's playing in the Big Ten title game. Purdue's my alma mater. So I mean I'm excited to kind of have them on kind of the background, kind of as I'm things. So if you see me looking left, that's what I'm looking at. So yeah. So just a little bit about me. I grew up in the Boston area and I don't know why, but like I just always had kind of this weird fascination on stadiums. And I can't explain it, but it just scratches this weird itch I have. And I just kind of really love that.
Yeah, and me too. I don't think it's a weird fascination, but because it just aligns with the history of the game in so many ways. And for me, I really became interested in just going to games more in person when I was in college in the Northeast, and then I would take the bus to say like I went to Franklin Field and then the Yale Bowl. I went to the Yale Bowl to watch Yale versus Maine in 2018, and I was just captivated. Rode the MTA North
Oh
from
yeah.
Garrison to New Haven. Garrison to Grand Central and then to New Haven, and then just caught the game in the afternoon, and then from there went to Franklin Field, then Harvard Stadium. So I know I mentioned Ivy League stadiums. There's so many stadiums too that just really speak to the history of the game. And you never know. Every stadium, of course, is unique. But me, I love the historical stadiums, and we're just gonna talk about some of our favorite stadiums, some of the stadiums we've been to, bucket list stadiums, and whatnot, because stadiums make college football just as much as anything else.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And one of the things you kind of touched on, which I really like, is kind of history. Because one thing that I really enjoy is going to a stadium and kind of embracing kind of all the things that occurred at that stadium. And so if you go to Fenway, like that's where like you're in the same building that Ted Williams played in. If you go to um say I know we're kind of ahead of ourselves here, but if you go to say Fulton County State, if you go to Fulton County in Atlanta, um, across the street from the old Brave Stadium is actually the outline of their old stadium. And they have home plate there. And that home plate is where Hank Aaron hit the home run that basically broke the all-time record for career home runs. And they even have the part of the outfield that the ball actually landed on as well. That's actually still standing. So it's a case that like it intersects this weird kind of thing of history and sports.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting note you make on Fulton County because when I was stationed in Georgia in Augusta, I went to um, not Turner Field, but Center Park Stadium in consecutive weeks. One week for the MEAC SWAC Challenge in Atlanta, and then once for Army versus Georgia State, and just like embracing the his like the history, not just Army playing in Atlanta, but standing there in the parking lot right next to the stadium. Like that's where Army won the '85 Peach Bowl against Illinois. One of the most iconic plays in Army history. Like it's an Army fan, something that's like just occurring to me now. Like hey, like I was in that vicinity of that play happening. One of the most iconic plays, the halfback pass that sealed the victory over Illinois. So it's very interesting to think about that, and kind of like if it's a stadium with a very little transformation over time for me, like the Yale Bowl, like Harvard Stadium, it's like you can just see yourself like in those time periods, just watching games like that. Like when I went to Harvard Stadium for Dartmouth Harvard in 2019, just like imagining, the Harvard beats Yale 29-29 game. That game was at Harvard Stadium. So just you imagine those events. I think that's a great point. Just imagine those events and like placing yourself there. So that's kind of why I don't really gravitate to Power Five stadiums, because there's just so much transformation. Like you can't really see like the stadium's roots. Like for me, like this year, like thinking about which games I'm gonna go to, like I was thinking about like I'm like Army playing LSU. Like this is a huge game for my alma mater. Like seeing them play LSU and everything. But I'm just like I just don't think the stadium experience would be as enjoyable, just because like I saw like the old pictures of Tiger Stadium, and like this isn't the same stadium. So for that reason, and also monetary reasons, I think instead I'll be looking at Army versus UTSA, because our Army has a proud tradition of playing in the Alamo Dome. So
Yeah, and so it's just reading that because and I hate that I forgot about this, but um I went to Lambeau and I went on a tour of Lambeau, and like Lambeau is of course kind of it's a um it's the cathedral of pro football, because you've had Pro Lambeau coach there. You had That's where Brett Favre played. That's where uh Barstar played, And then what was also cool was I after I was done with the tour there, I then went to East Green Bay and I visited the field where Kurt Lambeau actually played. And it was it was just kind of neat to kind of seeing kind of where he played. But there actually is one stadium that I went to that is, I think it's very kind of mistaken that I went there because I went there on accident. So what happened was I used to live in Cleveland, and when I was in Cleveland, I visited League Park, which I don't know if you know what League Park is. Do you know what? Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. And so basically for listeners, League Park is where Cy Young pitched, and it's just kind of neat to see kind of that kind of setting. And I had and I had kind of a rough week in Cleveland because on one Wednesday I got laid off, and then the following Wednesday my girlfriend broke up with me. So I was basically I got a job in Atlanta shortly after that, but um I had kind of on accident saw a post on Reddit that said, "Oh, hey, there's a stadium in Southern Ohio that is the location of the NFL's first night game." And I said, "Oh, that's fantastic. I would love to check that out. It's us in Portsmouth, Ohio." And so I put in my GPS when I left Cleveland, and I went down there, and um, it turned out actually that the Portsmouth Spartans, that's the name of the team that played there, um, they played there for I think 4 years. I'm not I can't say for sure, but they played for 4 years, I believe. And after that, they moved to Detroit and became the Lions. And the thing that, and not only was that the location of the NFL first night game, but it was also a case that they played what was called the Iron Man game, which is the Spartans only had 11 people on their team this game. And they were playing the at the time the NFL champion Packers, and not only did they win, but they shut them out. And that is just such a unique thing that happened. And it's just cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. I did not know the. I mean, I had heard about the Sports and Spartans before, but I had no idea that their stadium was still standing. I would assume it's nothing elaborate. Because given that most pro teams, most NFL teams in that time played either in the city's ballpark or smaller stadiums, because pro football just had not caught on. But I had no idea about the Iron Man game at all either, honestly. League Park is very interesting. I think it's great when cities at least leave like the outlines, like leave not just traces, but just footprints of like older stadiums. I know League Park has one. When I was in Baltimore for the Notre Dame Navy game, um, I flew in from Albuquerque at midnight, Saturday morning. So I I heard that the area for Baltimore Memorial, the site of old Baltimore Memorial Stadium, wasn't in the best area. So it was like a choice between Babe Ruth's house and some museums in downtown Baltimore. So I made a couple museum trips the morning of in downtown Baltimore. Did not get to see it, but that's another stadium where like you can see the old outline. Tiger Stadium's another one of my favorites when I went to Detroit to visit a friend from college.
Yeah.
It's just great walking around old Tiger Field. The outlines there, the big flagpoles there too, and everything. So it's just great when they leave traces and everything too of these old stadiums.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you, I feel, touched on something interesting, which is that a lot of the college stadiums kind of they they kind of enjoy their history more than the pros, because it's a case that I well, okay, so I'm from Boston, and the Red Sox first stadium was Huntington Ballpark, and they have a little they have a plaque where home plate was on Huntington Avenue, you know, but I do not believe that other ballparks have that same kind of thing. And it's unfortunate, because um because like we are fans of these teams because of their history. And I feel like not acknowledging that or not kind of commemorating that is kind of doing a disservice to the fans.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And it is hard for like a lot of these stadiums like to find like old trails, a lot of the old ballparks especially to find like traces of it. Which is a shame because you see the pictures and you just want to live through history. So speaking of, you know, um I guess it's an aspect of sports that has a lot of history. you a Purdue alum, excuse me, and a Big Ten fan. I'm interested to know your experiences at Big Ten stadiums. I've never been to Ross-Ade Stadium, so I'm not sure about the history behind it or the feel of it, whether you can like actually see the history in Ross-Ade Stadium. So, take me through your Big Ten stadium experiences and your Ross-Ade experience.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, well, before I dive into that, which Big Ten are we talking about? We're talking about like exactly. Yeah. And so are we talking about like the original Big Ten, or are we talking like UCLA and all that stuff? Like what are we kind of talking?
I'm talking about like kind of like the Big Ten that like we both grew up with, 11 team Big Ten. That's what I figured. So
Cool. All right,
yeah.
cool. All right, cool. Great. No, well, no, I mean, I didn't want you to be coming in, firing questions about, John Wooden UCLA and stuff. So, all right, cool. Good. So no, sorry, sorry, I just got a text. Yeah, Ross Stadium actually has kind of interesting history because initially um, Purdue football played at what's called Stewart Field, and Stewart Field was located more at kind of the center of campus at Purdue, and I majored in computer science. And what's funny is the Stewart Field was actually located across the street from what is now the computer science building. And then what's also kind of funny too about that is, so if Stewart Field's here, across the street from that is where Haas Hall was, and in there is actually where the old Purdue pool was, which is where the men's swim team swam, and that was named after uh, it was, I think, called Memorial Hall at that point, and it was called that because the Purdue men's basketball team on a train from Indianapolis to Chicago got into an accident, and that's why it was called Memorial Hall, is because there was tragedy happened there. So I'm going off the rails here. I know, but um, no, but so in terms of stadiums in the Big Ten, in terms of the 11 that we're talking about, I think I've only been to two or three. Actually, I've been to obviously Ross State at Purdue, um, but I've also been to Ryan Field as well in Chicago because my uncle, he is a Northwestern season ticket holder, and and I've been to a few games with him up there Ryan Field, which is fantastic. So in terms of actually the game day experience, what's funny is um, game day kind of starts on like Thursday, and the actual day of the game, um, we have this thing we do called Breakfast Club, where basically, look, I'm not going to sit here and say we're the best people doing this, but like, basically, you get dressed up and you go to the bars at Purdue. You have your drinks and you go to the game, and that's why usually if you watch the Purdue games, you will see people in they're all kind of dressed up in whatever kind of goofy outfits and whatnot. Um, Now, I do not believe that tradition is exclusive to Purdue. I would imagine that most kind of, as you mentioned earlier, most Power Five schools probably have something kind of similar to that, but it still is, very kind of excuse me, neat, and it adds to kind of the whole kind of experience.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing, honestly. And I come from different game day background where it's like, you march from cadet barracks. Well, not march, but you either walk from, cadet barracks to Mikey Stadium, for the game. There's no really such thing as tailgating, except like, the few there's like a few alums who on the way to the stadium will have their setup like which I think I like to tell myself that it was him, but I think one of these days I was walking to Mikey Stadium from my room with one of my friends, and I saw a number 24 1958 helmet, and I saw like an older gentleman who looked like Pete Dawkins, and I was like, surely that couldn't be him, you know. I just kept walking. So I mean, I think I was just in shock, but
Yeah.
that's like a legend. Like I think that's like a legend that in my life that I may have passed on, may not have, but it's just yeah. So but yeah, like coming from different, it's just great to hear like all these like tailgating traditions and everything, and it's you bring up something interesting, a couple interesting points, like talking about the old Purdue field, how anywhere there's open spaces, like anywhere you'd play college football with, like you know at Army at West Point, the plane, that's where the first Army Navy game was held, and cadets march on that, for parades, every game week, every home game weekend. So
Well,
this is interesting to think of.
yeah. So, I actually have a question about that because, do you know if Army's campus is open? Like, could you go and actually visit like the stadium like today or wherever, or like is it like or kind of like what's their policy? I guess.
Well, let's see. So I might have to find that. I might be finding that out this year. For Army home game that my
But
family
hey,
wants to make a
you're
trip to.
you're an alum, man. Okay, so I mean, I
Yeah.
imagine they're
So
to route some random guy from Massachusetts, So
yeah, I think on like high focus days like the graduation or like Army football game days, I do believe it is open. I just think that you have to get there early, like way earlier for the background checks and everything. So I think that's how it is on a regular day, just to see the stadium without anything. I think the facilities are like closed off. I think yeah, I didn't spend a lot of my time there. I wasn't an athlete there, so didn't spend a lot of my time in those areas.
and so what's funny is I went and visited University of Florida, and what I didn't know was their stadium is actually open. So you can actually, yeah, because I mean, it's a case that I went to lunch there, and I saw students walking in the stadium, and so I was at the bookstore, and like the bookstore is behind the stadium, so I said, "Hey, what's the deal with this? Like, can folks just kind of go in there?" And they said, "Oh yeah, I mean, the stadium's open." So I walked in the stadium, I sat down in the stands, and I was just kind of watching practice. I'm like, "Oh, cool. This is really." I mean, it's foreign because I mean, Ross 8's not open, and so it's just kind of one of those kind of fun things. So I wasn't sure if Army had kind of the same kind of policy.
Yeah, I don't think it is. But it's a funny story though about open stadiums. Like during Army Navy week, pranks are very because like I don't know if you've seen the Army Navy game and you've seen the them trade the midshipmen and the cadets so they can sit on their section. So I mean, at the academy, you'll have midshipmen go to West Point for a semester to study, and then you'll have cadets go to Annapolis to study, and like even with Air Force Academy, all the academies share it. We had a few Coast Guard people as well, make have a semester, and so um the during the 2020 game at the academy, the first one since World War II, that was at either academy. Of course, the end zones had to be painted for both academies, and so they heavily guarded, the Navy end zone, and said anyone who does a prank or messes with the Navy paint, because like of course like you're gonna want to put like beat in small letters like next to Navy. It's like they promised harsh, or what do you call it, quick and harsh punishment.
Yeah. So my dad was a Marine actually. So I mean, so that's kind of where I kind of sit in the whole Army Navy thing. And one thing that I heard is well, I mean, all the service kind of academies kind of have their own kind of fun little robberies and stuff. And there was an acronym for Marines that I heard, which I just got such a kick out of it. It's my ass rides in Navy equipment, sir. Um, and so that's and so that yeah. So like that's and so like that is and so I always did kind of enjoy kind of that kind of that kind of camaraderie, with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's the hijinks are always great with the
Oh,
Academy
100%.
rivalries. Yeah, and so it just makes it so much better. Like when I went to the first shoot I mean the name of the what they called the Air Force Army game, Commanders Classic, the first Commanders Classic. And I went and met with a high school friend who went to the Air Force Academy. I was only Army guy like in the section. Of course, he's sitting with Air Force people, and like they were like, they were cursing at me. They're like F you, like F Army, like not in a harsh way, but I mean like I was just like trying
Yeah.
to watch the game because like this out of all the Air Force Army games, like this is the one I want to go to as a ballpark football fan with them playing in at Globe Life Field at Globe Life Park. So it was just funny. And then then when they didn't convert it in overtime, I was the smuggest person in the building. I was just smug because they weren't as kind, but
Yeah.
yeah, so it's always fun for sure. Um, so I guess another thing I want to touch on with stadiums, like what is your favorite stadium that you've been to?
That been to. I'm gonna sound like a homer here. I am, but I just really enjoy Fenway Park. I do. Um, it's a case that it's the history of the stadium, the fact that all of the kind of moments that happened there, um, the fact that's where and you can bleep this if you want, but that's where Bobby fucking Dent hit his home run. You know, it's just like yeah. I mean, that I would say is probably my favorite stadium that I've been to. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the ballparks, especially for football. I'm a huge ballpark football, I mean, savant. Been to Fenway when I was in New York, for Thanksgiving Eve. They have their high school games, which like now they seem to be a yearly thing, the high school games, because they have the Fenway Bowl, so it provides kind of like a dry run for the groundskeepers, which I think is very smart.
Oh,
I
totally.
would love, yeah, I would love for Yankee Stadium to do something like that, like a dry run. Which it seems like they did, I guess, kind of last year with the Cortica Jug with Ithaca and Cortland playing at Yankee Stadium, which was a tough choice. It was a tough choice to choose Notre Dame Navy over Cortland versus Ithaca at Yankee Stadium because you're not going to see many D3 games in Yankee Stadium. But yeah, I got on those lines too, like ballpark wise. Like I loved going to Wrigley for Northwestern Purdue. Actually, that game was amazing. Aiden O'Connell, just for him to throw for 400 yards at like Wrigley Field, but like I feel like there's like a sweet spot that you sit in it like in a ballpark game. I was like sitting in that like facing the outfield and just seeing like imagining like where the fielders would be, where say I guess man it's, the today's Cubs do not have many household names, so it's like I can't even say of like where a certain player would roam the outfield. But I think Wrigley's my favorite college wise. Homer answer would be Mikey Stadium, but non-homer answer, I um I just love Franklin Field. I think the architecture of Franklin Field is just amazing, and it's just so recognizable,
Oh,
even when the
100%.
Eagles played there. Yeah, like in the end zone with the training facility, the brick training facility, it's just so recognizable. So that's my
Yeah.
answer.
And well, no, and so you touched on that's great, which is that, and I feel like that the Ivies kind of have a very underrated. I feel the Ivies have very underrated stadiums. You know, um, like their architecture is just tremendous. And I feel like they don't really get that much attention, and it's a shame too that I wish they did. One thing too that you mentioned, which I've forgotten about, is so I lived in Chicago for 2 years, and I lived 2 miles south of Wrigley, and I went to the first Cubs Red Sox game in Chicago since like the 1910s, wherever, And at the time, I was unemployed, and so what happened was I had a job interview at 10 a.m. I think I was done at like 10:30 or something like that, and then I walked over to the stadium. I scalped a ticket for like $20 or something, and then went to the game. And I got a phenomenal seat at the stadium. Like I was third baseline, maybe 2 or 3 rows up on the upper deck, and it was just tremendous. And that is one thing that is unfortunate, which is that I don't feel like fans nowadays can kind of experience that same kind of thing.
Yeah, like the intimacy of like the older ballparks and everything, like the upper
Exactly.
decks, just being very intimate and just providing like a good bird's eye view. Because I was on the upper deck when I went to Wrigley, and I always try to get upper deck seats whenever I go to a ballpark football game, or even a baseball game too. Just get a whole bird's eye view of the field, and it's just the architecture of baseball stadiums, like the planning that goes into it, where a lot of them are just placed, in the middle of cities, like down here, El Paso's ballpark, which is I think it's University of the Southwest or Southwest University ballpark. I think it's the name. Where it's modeled after Petco Park in that they have a brick building in the outfield. They have like the brick like kind of supply building in the outfield. But you get a bird's eye view of downtown El Paso. So I always like that aspect of ballparks. It's like not really something you see much for football stadiums really. But I do like that aspect for ballparks. Going on to like I guess like the future, like do you have any like bucket list stadiums that you want to visit?
Um, I'm taking a while to answer because our stadiums have been demolished. Is that acceptable answer? Or
Sure. Like I got a couple. I mean, I can answer one or two stadiums that I wish
well,
I went to as well.
I don't know. So I will tell you that I wish I went to the old Yankee Stadium. And that is one of my regrets, which is that I never got a chance to actually go to the old Yankee Stadium. However, I will say though that I would love to go to either the New Yankee Stadium or to I think it's called Bush Park. I think I'm not sure like which like what it's called now, but like the new Yankee Stadium or also I also like to go to the new Giant Stadium as well out in what's that out in San Francisco too. Because that seems to be just kind of a very kind of neat stadium. Because you can look, we're all kids at a certain point, and I love the fact that you can hit a ball into the water. I just think that's just kind of the coolest thing.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, for me, the one stadium that I wish I went to is the Rubber Bowl, in Akron.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it's yeah, very very old feel, kind of funny shaped and everything, and I mean, and it's a it's a crossover between I guess political history and everything with it being a Works Progress Administration stadium. So I got a soft spot in my heart for WPA stadiums. Bucky Stadium, I would like to see the LA Memorial Coliseum. I have seen the Rose Bowl. I went to the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, the cheaper substitute.
Really?
But yeah, I did. I did. I had to. that was the first time I applied for a credential because I was after the 2021 season, and
Yeah.
when they weren't allowing any spectators, so I was like, well, I might as well try to for a credential, and so it was great. Um, Seeing the sunset, like that was I was just so focused on like the Ivy League stadiums, I forgot that I had went to the Rose Bowl stadium, but I do want to check out LA Memorial.
Well, and so like I mean, yeah, I mean, Rose Bowl's on the list. I mean, I'm now upset myself that I actually forgot Rose because like I mean, as I said, that is the granddaddy of them all. Like,
Mhm.
um, and I feel like you not really to judge, but like I feel like you can't be a stadium fan and not have that on your list, you know?
Yeah, 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 exactly. I mean, it is, but just in terms of, I guess, like what is it, I guess, architectural features, like it is a bowl stadium. It's classic, but it's like for someone's like, I've been to the Yale Bowl, like the inspiration to the Rose Bowl, that was honestly like just as special in my opinion. But yeah, just like my bucket list stadium, I think just LA Memorial Coliseum. And I'm just a fan of like I'm just like the older, more simplistic stadiums that have maybe like one or two like recognizable features. Like just being when I was in Georgia, it was a joy to go to the Legion Field. So it was just a 4 hour drive from where I was. Just go to Legion Field and just see like where all that history happened in college football. It has seen better days definitely, but seeing Legion Field and then the Crampton Bowl as well, where yeah, like just like because for me as well as like if I go back in time, I would go to what is it? Sorry, I would go to
Good
the
man.
Blue Gray Classic. Yeah, I go to the Blue Gray Classic on Christmas Day that they used to have the All Star game um, on Christmas Day. So that's something that I wish I could go back in time and do, and just like seeing like kind of watching the Camellia Bowl like as a teenager, just seeing like that big grandstand and everything. It's like wow, it's just like so much history here in the stadium, like from like the 1920s on. So.
Yeah, so it's funny you mention that because I mean I'm kind of downplaying this, but um I when I was in Atlanta and I lived in Georgia, I went to so what they did was they did this cool thing, which was the Saturday before the Falcons' first game, they would do the I think they call it the 50-yard 5 or something like that. But basically, it was a 5K that ended on the 50-yard line
Okay.
of the Falcon Stadium. And I actually did it twice. And so I did that the first time I did that, it ended on the 50-yard line of the Georgia Dome. And the second time I did it, it ended on the 50-yard line of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And it's funny too, because when I went to the first one and it ended on the 50-yard line of the Georgia Dome, I unfortunately did not take into account how much history happened in the Georgia Dome.
Mhm.
You know, because that's the same stadium where I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the same stadium where Mike Tyson got his gold medal. Is that right?
Um, I don't think so. I don't think it was around when Mike Tyson got his gold
Okay.
medal.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. All right, cool. No, well, I don't know, but though it for sure though had Olympic moments though in there, you know, and it was just so kind of it was very neat kind of being on the same field where all these kind of moments happened. And one thing that I am very kind of frustrated by is the fact that that stadium, I think it got torn down before its prime. I don't understand why I mean, listen, it was such a great stadium and it was old, but like it's not like decaying, like say for instance, um like say the old Patriot Stadium was, and so it's and I know that a lot of the people that I was talking to in Atlanta kind of felt the same kind of way I did, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Atlanta has a kind of reputation as like tearing down the stadiums like a bit soon or just like moving on from them because Turner Field only saw 21 full or 20 full seasons of Braves play. And then same thing with like the George Dome around like I think less than 25. I think it was less than 25 seasons of full Falcon stadiums before going to Mercedes Benz State. I always get confused like Mercedes Benz Stadium, Mercedes Benz Superdome or whatever when the Superdome was called that. So I always get confused with that.
Yeah. No, no, I mean, oh, you're right. No, and yeah, no, it's a shame, but though I uh, that's one thing that is kind of very frustrating is that which when they do tear a team for their kind of prime, you know. Yeah, so you're right.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So I've hit all the topics that I've wanted to hit, Daryl. Do you have anything that you want to add?
Well, I imagine this point, after hearing two guys talk about stadiums for however long we've been on this call, I imagine you probably have some kind of interest in stadiums. And I now want to touch on the San Diego stadium that you had kind of mentioned. So this is a stadium that I was exposed to because I follow a guy on YouTube named 5 Point Vids. Do you at all follow him at all on there? You do?
Oh yeah, I'm well very familiar with 5 Point Vids. Yeah, I love his videos.
Oh, he is spectacular. And watching his videos kind of revigorated my love of stadiums. It did. And he did a video, I think it was last 2 years ago, around stadiums that were dreamt up and never built. I unfortunately forget which one it was. But he apparently San Diego had the stadium, which it was a dual use football and baseball field. And I know that this is a podcast and it's an audio medium. So I'm going to try my best to explain this. But if you'd like, I can send you the link so you can kind of put in the show notes wherever.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, it was a stadium that was in San Diego Bay, and home plate and the infield was in the Bay. The grandstand behind home plate was fixed, and then the grandstands on the first and third base lines were they were on like railings. And basically the idea was that when the Chargers played a game, they would float the first and third base lines to the sidelines of the baseball field, and it was just such a ludicrous idea, you know, and I do kind of wish it could have happened, but at the same time it's just kind of one of the weird things, you know.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I have seen the video and I have seen like that concept thrown out. Like the one that I guess the concept I'm familiar with is like the Dodgers thinking of building a dome in Brooklyn in terms of like proposed stadiums. I think that
What?
was on the video too. I think they thought about they explored a dome stadium in Brooklyn, or it might be the Red Sox that did that. I think one of them, or if not both of them, considered doing a dome stadium in the city.
I don't. Okay. I don't think it was Boston because if it was
Okay.
Boston, then I actually would have known that because I'm a stadium weirdo in Massachusetts. So no, but though, so like what what I guess is kind of the weirdness of that though, because
It's not.
um
It's not weird. It's just like kind of weird to think. I mean, I think it's weird to think of the Dodgers playing, like staying in Brooklyn. Like we don't have the LA Dodgers because they're playing in a dome stadium in Brooklyn. I think that's the extent of the weirdness.
okay, cool. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean that's kind of on the same lines as the Chicago Tower. I don't know if you've heard of that at all.
No.
So the Chicago Tower was ridiculous. It was a mile tall building that we're going to build in Chicago that was going to house all of the government employees, basically. And it's just insane because it's like because I guess the top quarter of it would have been for just like heating and electric, you know. But yeah, it's just one of those kind of weird kind of things, you know.
Yeah, I'd never heard about that one before. That yeah, I mean that's just interesting. Interesting. Like who knew that you would get building architecture tidbits on the podcast. But yeah, like that's all I have to cover, Daryl. Do you have anything final to add? Anything you can plug? Anytime I have a guest, or I guess anytime I have a guest from now on. I said this last time. Like there's no such thing as a shameless plug. No plug shameless. So I mean, anything you'd like to plug or anything you'd like to say before we close?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the one thing I would probably plug is I work for a startup called Sandbox. That's a Sandbox with two X's. Um, we are an app that facilitates communication between military members and their families. And yeah, I mean, if you have a loved one or a family member that's in the service industry, then I think they would get a lot of benefit from our app. So that's about it. You know.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, this is the first time we're actually having like an actual product or service, plugged on the podcast. So I mean, that's pretty cool. We usually get people's work, plugged on the podcast and just like linked below. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoy that. It's been a pleasure, Daryl. This will not be the last time you'll be on the podcast for sure.
Sure.
We'll stay in touch and everything. And until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul.